What you're looking at is the most endangered wild tree on the planet. This species dates back over 200 million years. It endured ice ages, supervolcanic eruptions, and the breakup of the continents. But today, it has become unimaginably vulnerable. This is the Wollemi Pine. Scientists believed it went extinct 2 million years ago. But that all changed in 1994, when a park ranger stumbled across a secret grove hidden in a remote canyon. Right now, just 89 of these trees remain hidden in the wild, and trying to find them can land you a $300,000 fine and a 2-year prison sentence. But that's just the tip of the Wollemi Pine's extraordinary conservation strategy. What you're about to discover is the unprecedented mission to save this small group of trees. It's a story of blindfolded scientists, covert firefighting operations, and a radical plan that successfully disrupted the global black market. It's September 10th, 1994. David Noble, a national parks officer, was spending his weekend doing what he loved most, exploring uncharted canyons in the Blue Mountains wilderness northwest of Sydney. Deep in the Wollemi National Park, Noble and his 2 companions were searching for new rock climbing routes when something caught his eye. In a secluded sandstone gorge, surrounded by tree ferns and trickling water, stood a cluster of trees unlike anything he'd seen before. These weren't your typical Australian eucalyptus or rainforest species. They had straight trunks reaching towards slivers of sunlight. But what really grabbed his attention was their bark. Dark brown and heavily textured, looking almost like bubbling chocolate frozen in time. Noble knew plants. As a parks officer, he'd seen thousands of native species across New South Wales. But these trees were completely unfamiliar. Their foliage had an almost fern-like appearance. Intrigued, he carefully collected a small sample and tucked it into his pack. Back at park headquarters, Noble showed his samples to colleagues. Nobody could identify them. The specimens eventually made their way to botanists at the Royal Botanic Gardens in Sydney, which is when they realized they were looking at something extraordinary. This wasn't just a new species, it was an entirely new genus, one that existed only in the fossil record. The tree Noble found belonged to the Araucariaceae family, ancient conifers that dominated forests when dinosaurs roamed the earth. Based on fossil evidence, scientists believe these particular trees had vanished from the planet around 2 million years ago. When the discovery was announced in December 1994, it made headlines worldwide. Carrick Chambers, director of the Royal Botanic Gardens, famously described it as the equivalent of finding a dinosaur alive on Earth. The media dubbed it the dinosaur tree and the greatest botanical discovery of the 20th century. But even as the world celebrated, Australian authorities faced an immediate dilemma. How do you protect a biological miracle that everyone suddenly wants to see? Within months of the announcement, officials made a decision that was unprecedented in plant conservation. They would keep the exact location absolutely secret. The coordinates became classified information, known only to a handful of researchers and park managers. But this wasn't just bureaucratic caution. Early interactions with the site had already shown how fragile the situation was. In 1995, during one of the first scientific expeditions, a helicopter's rotor blades accidentally struck and damaged part of a Wollemi pine's crown. If trained scientists with the best intentions could harm these trees, what might happen if the location became public knowledge? In late 2005, researchers conducting a routine health check made a chilling discovery. Some of the younger trees were showing signs of decline: yellowing leaves, thinning canopies, and weakened root systems. Lab tests confirmed their worst fears. Phytophthora cinnamomi had infiltrated the grove. Phytophthora cinnamomi isn't technically a fungus, it's a water mold, a microscopic organism that produces swimming spores capable of devastating plant communities. In Australia, it's known as the biological bulldozer because of how efficiently it can wipe out native vegetation. The pathogen attacks root systems, essentially starving trees to death by cutting off their ability to absorb water and nutrients. But what made this discovery unsettling was that the pathogen wasn't native to that pristine canyon ecosystem. Someone had carried it in from the outside world. And although it might not sound like a big deal, it became a death sentence for these endangered trees. You see, all the Wollemi pines in that canyon are essentially clones of each other. Genetic analysis revealed that sometime between 10,000 and 26,000 years ago, the species went through such a severe population bottleneck that virtually all genetic diversity was lost. Every tree in the grove shares nearly identical DNA, descendants of perhaps just one or two individuals that survived the last ice age. This genetic uniformity means they have no natural defenses against new diseases. If Phytophthora could kill one Wollemi pine, it could kill them all. The contamination incident validated every extreme security measure the authorities had implemented. It proved that even well-meaning visitors could accidentally doom an entire species. From that moment forward, the protocols became even more stringent. Today, the handful of people authorized to visit the site must scrub their boots and equipment with methylated spirits before entering the canyon. Some researchers have even reported being blindfolded during helicopter transport to prevent them from memorizing landmarks that could compromise the location. And the legal framework backing up these measures is equally severe. In 2005, the New South Wales government declared the Wollemi Pines Canyon a critical habitat under state conservation law. But these extreme measures create a profound paradox at the heart of modern conservation. Here's a species that captures the imagination of people worldwide, a living link to the age of dinosaurs, a miracle of survival against impossible odds. Yet the very fascination it inspires becomes its greatest threat. Every person who wants to see these ancient trees in their natural habitat represents a potential vector for the diseases that could destroy them. As Dr. Baron McKenzie from the National Parks and Wildlife Service puts it, people think they can visit safely without having an impact, and it's just not the case. It just takes 1 gram of infected soil, and that's it. There's currently no cure. But as conservationists soon realized, merely hiding the tree was creating a dangerous black market incentive. So to truly save the Wollemi pine, they had to embrace the very human desire they were fighting. It became one of the greatest plays in the history of conservation strategy. Instead of restricting access to Wollemi pine specimens, the Australian government decided that they would instead flood the global market with them. If anyone could legally buy a Wollemi pine, why would collectors risk massive fines and prison time to steal one from the wild? In October 2005, Sotheby's Australia held what they called the Botanical Sale of the Century. 292 young Wollemi pine saplings, all propagated from cuttings taken from the wild trees, went under the hammer in Sydney. Bidders from around the world competed for the chance to own a piece of living prehistory, and the results exceeded everyone's expectations. The auction raised over 1.15 million Australian dollars, with individual lots selling for thousands. One collection of just 15 saplings fetched $149,000. The average price per plant was nearly $4,000, 3 times more than their projected sale price. But this wasn't just about the money. Every dollar from those sales went directly back into Wollemi pine conservation efforts, meaning the trees were literally paying for their own protection. By 2006, Wollemi pines were available in garden centers across Australia, the UK, and the United States. The price of around $50 to $100 per plant put them within reach of ordinary gardeners, not just wealthy collectors. What had been the world's rarest tree the year prior was suddenly growing in backyards from Sydney to Seattle. But this mass cultivation program also created another unexpected bonus: the world's largest citizen science project for an endangered species. Thousands of home gardeners became accidental researchers, testing how Wollemi pines grew in different climates and soil conditions. In 2023, scientists published results from a survey of over 1,500 growers across 31 countries. The data revealed that these ancient trees were surprisingly adaptable. They thrived in temperate climates with adequate rainfall, tolerated both heat and cold better than expected, and grew well in various soil types. One grower in France reported their Wollemi pine reaching over 8 meters tall in just 14 years. Gardens in Scotland found the trees could survive temperatures as low as minus 12 degrees Celsius. And this information proved invaluable for conservation planning. Scientists now knew exactly what conditions the species needed to establish backup populations in the wild. The citizen science data directly informed decisions about where to plant translocation sites, secret locations where young Wollemi pines could grow, as insurance against catastrophe at the original grove. But perhaps the most sophisticated breakthrough of the conservation project emerged in 2024, the Global Meta-Collection Project. Advanced genetic sequencing had revealed something remarkable. Despite appearing genetically identical, the wild Wollemi pines actually contain 6 distinct genetic strains, subtle variations that had previously been undetectable. Scientists propagated representatives of each strain and distributed 174 young trees to 28 botanical gardens across the UK and Europe. By 2019, tens of thousands of these ancient trees were thriving in gardens worldwide, while the precious wild grove remained safely hidden and protected. But by the end of the year, Australia's climate delivered a terrifying reminder that some threats can't be managed as easily. The summer of 2019-2020 became known as the Black Summer, the most catastrophic fire season in the country's recorded history. Across New South Wales, massive blazes consumed over 5 million hectares of forest, an area larger than the entire country of Costa Rica. In November 2019, the Gospers Mountain Fire ignited northwest of Sydney. Within weeks, it had grown into a monster, consuming everything in its path as it swept through the Blue Mountains region. Fire maps showed the blaze heading directly toward the classified location, where fewer than 100 Wollemi pines clung to survival in their secret canyon. As the fire approached, park managers faced an agonizing decision. The Wollemi pine grove had survived in secret for 25 years precisely because humans stayed away. Now, saving it would require the most intensive human intervention in the species' modern history. In late December 2019, as smoke columns towered above the Blue Mountains, a covert operation began. Specialist remote area firefighters were helicoptered into the canyon under extreme secrecy. Their mission? Install an irrigation system that could keep the grove saturated even as fire swept overhead. Working around the clock, the team set up pumps and sprinklers fed by the canyon's water sources. They drenched not just the trees themselves, but the entire surrounding area, creating a buffer of wet vegetation and saturated soil. Meanwhile, aerial tankers conducted precision water bombing runs, dropping thousands of liters directly onto the grove and its approaches. When the smoke finally cleared in January 2020, aerial photographs revealed a remarkable sight: a ribbon of green Wollemi pines standing tall amid a landscape of charred rock and blackened earth. The ancient trees had survived, protected by the most expensive and technologically sophisticated firefighting operation ever mounted for a plant species. But the victory came with a sobering realization. Climate change was fundamentally altering the equation for Wollemi pine survival. The 2019 fires weren't a once-in-a-century anomaly. They were a preview of Australia's new normal. This reality drove the next phase of conservation strategy, establishing backup populations in multiple secret locations across the region. Teams began planting hundreds of young Wollemi pines in carefully selected sites, creating a network of insurance populations that could survive even if the original grove was lost. The species that had once depended on isolation for survival now depended entirely on human intervention. Today, the wild Wollemi pine population stands at exactly where the crisis began: 45 mature trees and 46 juveniles clinging to existence in their secret canyon. The Phytophthora infection that alarmed scientists in 2005 remains present in the grove. Infected trees receive regular phosphite treatments, chemical injections that boost their natural defenses and slow the disease's progression. Meanwhile, the translocation program has quietly expanded into one of the most ambitious rewilding projects in Australian history. At least 3 secret locations now host backup populations of young Wollemi pines, each site chosen for its geological similarity to the original canyon, but far enough away that a single catastrophe can't destroy everything. These insurance populations face their own challenges. The 2019 fires that threatened the original grove actually destroyed most of the first translocation site, incinerating hundreds of carefully planted saplings. But rather than abandoning the strategy, managers doubled down. By 2021, they had replanted those sites and established new ones, spreading the genetic legacy of the Wollemi pine across an ever wider network of hidden refuges. But perhaps the most remarkable transformation is cultural. The Wollemi pine has evolved from a botanical curiosity into a diplomatic symbol for Australia. Prime ministers regularly present saplings to foreign leaders as gifts, living embodiments of the country's ancient natural heritage and modern conservation expertise. Yet challenges remain formidable. Climate models predict increasingly severe droughts and heat waves across southeastern Australia. The microclimate that has protected the Wollemi pines for millions of years may become uninhabitable within decades. But this story also proves that creative conservation can work miracles. Through classified locations, market flooding, and global cooperation, we've given a species that was down to its last few individuals a fighting chance at survival. The dinosaur tree that almost vanished in secret now grows in gardens worldwide. A living reminder that extinction isn't inevitable if we refuse to accept it. If you want to discover more incredible rediscovery stories, check out our next video about the black-naped pheasant pigeon, a bird that was seen for the first time in 140 years in the remote forests of Papua New Guinea. Subscribe so you don't miss these amazing stories of species coming back from the edge.